Throughout history, we have heard stories about people who possess superpowers, and it has provided us with inspiration and imagination. Way back, I remember hearing stories about the Greek gods, Hercules and Zeus. These figures were, in a way, gods themselves. They were born with the powers. They were using their might on the people of the land. Listening to these stories, we gather that sometimes ourselves, we are insignificant compared to these figures. Or we inspire to be and level up ourselves to be just like them. The most famous story of a man who possessed supernatural powers that was not claimed to be a god is Jesus. Jesus, a man born in Bethlehem, who was born from a virgin mother. It was obviously the inspiration for the character of Darth Vader, also known as Anakin Skywalker, who was born from a mom with no father. So the man Jesus grew up fairly normal, had normal parents, normal siblings, and lived a fairly normal life. However, at some point, he disappeared in history. And there are many who speculate what he was doing. Where did he go? Years had gone by, and for him to finally return, and the story continued of him, and he suddenly had possessed these cool powers to be able to heal those who were sick, cured a blind man. And the stories get even far out when we hear of him walking on water, creating abundance of fish from the sea so that the village can eat, creating wine out of water so that it can be used at a dinner. Hello. And where did he get these powers from? Where did he learn all that? And that was my question growing up. So did Jesus go to a school and learn these powers from other people who possessed the same powers? Did he learn this from God himself? Jesus was known as being the actual Son of God, of Yahweh himself. And then, he's going to get burnt, I think. Jesus was known as being the Son of God himself. So did he happen to have powers that were within him since the day he was born? Or was God teaching him these lessons when he was away? Did he go to a school where he had learnt all of this? Or did he go into the forest and find peace and powers there? What did it take for him to learn these powers? You can only imagine that wherever Jesus went, it took some focus and it took some time and patience. He wasn't practicing martial arts, for example. He was not jumping around and doing flips and learning incredible feats of strength. No, he had to have learned this through maybe meditation or intense focus, feeling the energies and understanding the concept of these powers from what is our reality to what is beyond our reality. Maybe he learned this all on his own. Maybe through revelations he had come to understand these powers, because they did not come overnight. Certainly they would not have. He didn't wake up one morning and then all of a sudden, boom, he had the powers. He would have had to have practiced, and he would have had to have failed and then learned from his mistakes to the point where he would have absolute confidence in his ability to perform these miracles. So there seems to be some connection to God. Unlike our Greek stories of our Greek gods, where they were gods, here is a man who is tapping into these powers through the name of God. So as time passed, and the centuries have moved on. Many had claimed to have powers that were being driven through some form of spirituality, through some sort of spirit, some divineness. We talked about wizards on our channel before, but there has been more famous stories about witches throughout the years. One of the more famous witches was Mother Shipton, who is also known as Ursula. And learning about this, I found, not that I really knew the history of this person, but I have learned the story of this person was touching upon other elements into other stories that I have heard. For example, Ursula, being this evil witch, was brought out into the stories of Walt Disney. And so her story, it begins with being born through her mother, Agatha, who was another figure that is being brought out into the Hollywood scene as being a famous witch. So I see the connection here. Although I wasn't aware of these individuals, they are certainly been inspired by their stories. Agatha, who was a young girl, 15 or 16, when she gave birth to Ursula. And again, another story in which there was no father figure. So it was some sort of divine creation that Ursula was born. Agatha and Ursula were both deemed as being witches. They both delved into the powers of the mysticalness of these energies and these forces. And witches during those days were all said to have been part of a dark force of evil. And so Ursula herself was born from evil. Ursula grew up to be one of those evil-looking figures that modern witches derive their look from. She had a disfigured face and even had a bit of a hunch, and her legs were kind of crooked, and the way she walked was very creepy, and there was no doubt that they deemed her as being the child of something evil. But where was she drawing her powers from? She was getting her powers from the evilness, the evil spirits. So is there another figure in history that we know of that was not drawing their supernatural powers from some sort of spiritual or divinity from another realm beyond our own that we know of? Everyone knows the name Nostradamus, who 500 years ago possessed the ability to see into the future. He would go into a trance. He would bring himself inwards, within his own self, within his own mind, and then he would be able to see these visions of the future. So what was that power exactly? What was he tapping into? Was it through some sort of spiritual form? Not according to him. He was feeling as though he was just tapping into these visions. As scientists begin to learn more about what our reality is, and we start to question the idea that our reality isn't linear. It really isn't just going from past to present to future. That there is some form of all-encompassing time. It's almost as though the world that you live in is a blueprint that's already been laid out, and you're just traveling through the blueprint. Look at it in like your story has already been written, and we are just going page by page by page throughout our lives, living the story that was already laid out. So was Nostradamus just basically tapping into the overall information that guided our reality? Nostradamus's successful predictions was a bit of a hit and miss. There were certainly certain things that he got right, especially during his time. Even the king had put his faith into Nostradamus until the kings predicted death. One of the more interesting games about these predictions is that Nostradamus never gave any timeline as to when these events would happen. They were always just in the future. So he would describe what was happening in his vision, and it took historians and people who read, you and I, people who read his predictions, to try to figure out At what points in history is he talking about? One of the more outstanding points in history that it seems as though Nostradamus had predicted was the coming of Hitler. And it strikes you when you realize just how very close his predictions describe Hitler to a T. It sparks the imagination again for everyone in our generation to hold that Nostradamus' predictions are true. It has sparked this imagination within our generation. In fact, 100 years ago, we had another clairvoyant in the name of Edgar Cayce, who he himself did the same thing, bringing himself into a trance in which he then sees these visions. I think it was described by Edgar Cayce himself as being in tune with these visions. So being in tune led to these clue that there was some form of energy, there was frequency. So being in tune was like changing the dial on your radio station and finding that right setting to which you're open to the message. And so that sparked the whole generation of individuals feeling like they can tap into these powers. So the idea here is that the witches were tuning in to some form of evil. So hitting that evil dial, where Jesus is hitting the positive dial, tuning into the divinity channel, for example. And so is that how it all works? And so for those who go into meditation to try to find that right frequency, it seems to work for some individuals where they claim to be able to tap into these higher communications with other beings from another realm. I too have felt like I have that connection with, maybe it's God, maybe it's the earth itself, maybe it's just the forest, maybe it's beyond our own universe. But I too feel that through concentration and focus and opening your mind to it and tapping into this frequency, that you do feel something. And those who are able to use this tuning in are able to manipulate their own world to bring certain aspirations into their life. So if you are inspired by being a positive person, positive things happen around you. And if you are one who wants to delve into that negativity and use these evil spirits to their own advantage, is it possible that other people who unknowingly end up using these powers in their lives? You hear it all the time, and it may have happened to you, where you have done something or you've experienced something that was kind of really out of the ordinary, unexplainable, but you have felt it in a way where it wasn't just a coincidence, there was something real to the experience. And so, where do you fall on this? Have you ever tried to tap into something that is beyond your reality? And again, is it this force within you that is just a frequency, for example? Maybe we're not even on the right track on that one, but have you had any experiences where you have felt some sort of divine power within you, or you've come across someone who has? I'd love to know your story. I'd love to hear that in the comments below. Please feel free to share your stories or comment. And again, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Beyond anything else, please enjoy life. Take care. And I wish you well.